Yo gamers, Nature here. Today we just have a quick guide and update for Phase 3 in WoW Season of Discovery for Hunters. We'll cover the questions that I've been kind of swarmed with the last couple of days. Basically, what's better, ranged or melee hunter? And whether you go range or melee as a spec, what's your rotation, talents, runes that you should focus and pick up? Real quick, don't forget to mash the like and subscribe. I'll have a full guide out later, as well as other WoW content if you're interested. Well, to answer the first question, as of right now, melee DPS is still king. Based off the logs, you're looking at around 200 to 300 DPS increase over like the same skilled player when you're playing melee versus ranged. With that being said, there is a couple of things to factor in for that. For one, the new range rotation is much more complex than the melee rotation. And two, most of us kind of ignored some of the ranged runes and gear last phase. And three, there is a new ranged rotation and rune that's heavily dependent on the lock and load rune. So not only is this new rune insanely big in the rotation, it's also the most complicated and hardest one to get in phase 3. So a lot of the new logs don't reflect accurately, since this rune adds easily like 100 DPS on its own when it's properly utilized. And a lot of us don't have the experience yet to properly utilize the new range rotation, right? So on the flip side of that, some of the mechanics and boss encounters in Sunken Temple make it easier for the range to do more damage while making it a little bit more challenging for melee. And let's not forget, some things like True Shot Aura make like your whole party or a whole raid viable as well. So basically, let's keep an eye out. Yes, melee is king right now, and it'll probably stay king for the entirety of the phase, since melee scales a little bit better than the range. However, there's a lot of things that the range are benefiting from, and I really feel like once this all gets sorted out, it'll be a lot closer of a playing field. To summarize, like whether you go melee or range this phase, I think you'll be doing just fine. So let's first cover melee hunter, and we'll then do an update for the range hunter afterwards. Number one thing as a hunter, if you're going melee, or like if you're in any way not decided, I repeat, do not get the Verdant Keeper's Bow off the Corruption of the Seed questline. This is the one for completing Maraudon. We want to get Thrashblade, as this is a massive upgrade over our phase 2 loot, while the bow is basically on par with phase 2 loot and is going to be behind an easy to get STV event bow. Keep in mind with your spec, or with the spec, I'm only going to talk about what's different from last phase. And as a warning, obviously there's variations that are viable and maybe better in like niche scenarios. So remember, this is a basic guide. All that stuff and all the extra fluff will be in the full guide later. However, feel free to comment if you really enjoy something and you think it might be good and added to the full guide. We'll pick up the same Beast Mastery tree that we had in phase 1. The real change here is we'll take those extra 10 talent points and put them into monster slaying. We'll put them into humanoid slaying, and then we'll get the 2 out of 2 into savage strikes. Now, you'll have a couple extra points here that you can do whatever you want with them. I personally put them into bestial swiftness for PvP and endurance training, so my pet has a little bit more HP in the dungeon, but anything really goes with those extra points here. On head rune, we'll go with the new rapid killing on a fight that's 3 minutes long or longer. We can get multiple rapid fires in, and remember, rapid fire was recently changed to include melee damage, and this is also a big trash advantage for overall numbers when you can pop it more frequently on trash and get the 20% damage bonus as well in the first skill used. So to my understanding, on boss encounters though, with this rune, those mobs don't proc the 20% increased damage on killing like an ad that is spawned by the boss. So if somebody could test that for me and shoot me feedback, that'd be great, since not all things work that way that in Season of Discovery as they did in like original classic, right? With that being said, on shorter boss encounters, we can use the new rune Cat-like Reflexes to reduce the built-in CD on Flanking Strike, but we should rarely use this, as Flanking Strike should reset before the 15 seconds most of the time anyway. But if we're on a boss encounter and it's shorter than 3 minutes, this is the only thing that could potentially add DPS, so we'll use the cat-like reflexes. On the new wrist rune, we'll use Raptor's Fury. Now, this is huge for melee players and a definite pickup. You'll want to grab this before you go into Sunken Temple, of course, since it's pretty easy to get. And now it adds a stacking debuff or buff. Each time you use your Raptor Strike ability, it does 15% increased damage to your next Raptor Strike or Mongoose Bite, and that stacks up to 5 times, which would be 75% damage increase. Now the buff lasts 15 seconds, and the catch here is nothing does refresh the 15-second buff timer, so you'll want to get your stacks up quick before it drops off, and then you'll just want to repeat once it drops off and get those stacks up again. As a side note on Melee Hunter, this is the hunter that should be running Aspect of the Lion, since the stats feed directly into your pet, and will give you the most damage. So we'll go over that more with the range hunter, but you'll want to, as a melee hunter, be running Aspect of the Lion, because that's going to be a damage increase for you, and that frees up for like a range hunter to use a different rune in that slot. So now the rotation here with melee hunter, we will prioritize Raptor Strike first, as this is the most of our damage. And again, just no, I see some of the guides saying use Flanking Strike first. That's wrong. Flanking Strike is going to be second priority. You'll always prioritize Raptor Strike because it's just so much more damage. Then on fights with 3 or more targets, you can actually use Carve. So on like Trash, you can use Carve, or some of the boss encounters have this as well. While we would ignore this in your normal rotation because we wouldn't have Carve equipped, then the last priority we'll actually use is Wing Clip. So again, it's going to go Raptor Strike, Flanking Strike. If we have Carve, we'll use Carve, and then we'll use Wing Clip. Now, Wing Clip doesn't do a lot of damage, and I get questions like, why are we using it? This is to proc our fish for the procs. So like the Wind Fury, the Savage Strikes proc, to then get a free auto end. For Range Hunter, this is where things get really interesting. Again, we'll just touch base on what's different from Phase 2 and provide a basic BIS build, meaning it does the most damage output on single target. Obviously, there's variations that could work on niche scenarios or like niche playstyles. I get it. Put it in the comments below if you feel like that should be added to the full guide that I'll do later. Now, I'm pretty excited though. This is completely a new rotation. It's super fun to play in raid. I got several hundreds in my first raid, and although I'm sure they got beaten by now, this was a blast to do. Marksman Spec is back, boys, and it's much better than last phase. As a side note, True Shot Aura is massive in any melee group, and that should be factored in as well because that adds damage to your overall raid. This was also buffed to do increased damage for hunters and for range hunters as well. With the extra 10 talent points on Marksman, we'll run Improved Aspect of the Hawk, Monster Slaying, and Humanoid Slaying. Now, technically, on humanoid encounters, we'd want the 3 out of 3. That would be BIS. But there are more Dragonkin encounters, which is why I listed it the way I did. So 3 out of 3 Monster Slaying would be BIS overall. However, if you're trying to do Trash, there's a lot of humanoids on Trash, so you can really go either way here. Now, the trap here that I've seen a couple of guides and a lot of players on like the Hunter Discord suggesting is going Improved Serpent Sting. Don't fall into the trick. Yes, you'll be using Chimera Shot a lot more, but each talent here, let's break it down, only adds 3 damage to your Chimera Shot. So that 3 damage multiplied by using it 4 times. Even if you do all 3 talent points, it's 9 damage per Chimera Shot. Multiplied by 3 or 4 times, that's around 36 damage over a 16-second period. And it factors to be about 3 DPS. So it's not a big deal here when that static 1% talent or 1% proc for the 30% haste buff from Improved Aspect of the Hoth. I mean, mathematically, those are just going to be more DPS. For runes, obviously, we'll rock the new Lock and Load rune on our head for the free Chimera Shot or Explosive Shot proc. On wrist, we'll go ahead and rock the new focus fire because 10% damage on trap isn't that much, but the 30% haste buff on our pet, plus the 20 focus and 15% haste buff that we'll get on us is pretty insane. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting, though. On chest rune, if we have no one else providing lion or kings, we would use aspect of the lion. Of course, we're going to do that for the raid, and we'll prioritize that. Now, if we already have lion from like a melee hunter, like I listed earlier, because they're going to be running that anyway, or kings, we'll go ahead and run master marksman since it nets more DPS than the additional 10% stats. Now, with that being said, you guys, I'm going to pause and I have two side notes. Number one, in the top logs, the pet does about 21 to 27% of the hunter's damage on average. So if the combination of using TNT rune plus lone wolf for the 30% increase damage outperforms focus fire, master marksman, and your pet, this could be the play, especially on boss fights where your pet can't get good uptime, or on trash encounters. If you're really trying to perform on overall, it certainly is going to be the play to run the TNT rune in lone wolf instead of the focus fire, master marksman, and having your pet out. Now, number two, Blizzard, if you're watching, please, for the love of God, change Heart of the Lion or aspect of the lion rune. What needs to happen here is Heart of the Lion should be a talent that we just learned from the trainer that could give everyone the 10% stats in the raid. Now, as a trade-off, then we should have a chest rune that we could activate if we want to, that would then give us the extra 10% stats. That way we would break it up. So part of it is going to be a talent that everybody gets for 10%. Part of it is the rune that we can activate if we want to. That way we're not forced to run aspect of the lion rune if we don't want to. So for the love of God, make the change, because not all of us want to run aspect of the lion and be forced to do so if nobody else is running it, right? Because there's other runes that net more DPS. So why would we not want to use those? Now, let's go over the rotation for single target. We'll use Immolation Trap to then proc the free cast, Chimera Shot, followed by Frost Trap to proc the free cast again, Chimera Shot, followed by another immediate Chimera Shot since the first two were free. And we'll then want to proc our Focus Fire rune along with Aim Shot. A little trick here is you can actually macro these together since Focus Fire does not cause a global. Then we'll pop our multi-shot and then we'll go ahead and repeat. Now, I will say there's a delay on your traps going off from when you shoot them. That's okay. Just stick to the order and you'll pop. Now, I get the question on pets. It's a little too early to tell you guys like exactly what is best, but a couple of quick nuggets and notes you can have. Cat is still great. It's parsing very high. Just make sure you pick up the new ranks of Claw and Bite. Those are going to be a massive increase over the previous ranks. And then also with Wind Serpent, it's doing really strong as well, especially on those encounters that make it harder to have like 100% melee uptime. So, and actually the easiest thing to do is you can just walk into Sunken Temple, your first raid, have no pet, make sure your pet's abandoned, and tame one of the Wind Serpents at the beginning of the dungeon before the first boss. So there's also a new Core Hound available, and it isn't like the most insane for solo encounters, but for multi-pools like the trash, it's actually kind of nutty. It does an AoE fire cone. So for those looking to increase their overall damage, that would be a great pickup. For ranged DPS as well, a side note, Beast Mastery is still going strong. So if you're newer to Hunter or you don't like the lock and load rune or scared about executing the rotation, no worries. Just use the BM spec I listed for melee minus like Savage Strikes and pick up whatever you want with those extra talents. You'll do just fine with the BM spec as well if you are ranged. Now, that's all I had for today. As always, mash the like and subscribe. And if you're really feeling like a croc, join the Croc Nation. Peace!